All of these Ask Casas count towards your guys' 12 hours of continued education, and they are always posted on our Casa YouTube channel so that you can always revisit the topics that we are hearing about month to month. Thank you all so much for taking the time to be here today. I'm very excited about this presentation, as I know a lot of you are as well. We have Seth Riker here with us from DCF. He works in the adolescent unit as a program supervisor, and he's going to share about supporting transitional aged youth who are in care, the different services that DCF provides when youth are looking at transitioning into their next path of life, and how we as CASAs can kind of tag team with DCF and with the youth that we are serving to make sure they are being supported as much as possible during this time in their lives. So Seth, thank you so much for being here, and I will kind of pass it off to you so you can get started.
Well, welcome everyone. I appreciate you joining, and hopefully I can get to everyone's questions. I know that it's always a big mystery, like what is DCF doing for our youth in care, especially our adolescents. I've been with DCF for 27 years. To give you a little background, and I've worked in so many different positions throughout the state. This is my fourth office, and being in central office, where I'm part of the Adolescent and Young Adult Services unit. Which I've been part of this unit since 2022, but it's been a long road. I did adoptions, ongoing investigations, you name it. Well, they call it response now. I also do work on the hotline, so I've seen a lot from the department. And I mean, I will even say that in the beginning, when I first started working with DCF, that adolescents were tough for me. And I think it's because I was very young at the time. I think I was 23 when I started. Um, and the more I got to work with teens, they went from being difficult in my head to being really easy because I very quickly loved the work because I understand what they're going through. Being in care is never fun. Even if it is safe and it's meeting some of their needs, it's nothing that they're joyous about, and it can be difficult being placed with strangers. I mean, if I took you and asked you to go into a house across the street and go in there, go into the bathroom and take a shower, we'd all feel a little uncomfortable because that is not our house. We don't know these people. But that's in essence what we are asking youth when we're placing them in care is to go into a stranger's home and try to feel comfortable and try to trust this person. And then also to trust that social worker who they saw maybe once or twice a month. It's asking a lot of them. DCF does have supports and services, I think the biggest thing is just for us, just being mindful of their position versus where we are, what our hopes and dreams are. That we need to make sure that we are listening and attending to them. Um, so I guess the biggest thing, what does DCF provide? Like, what are we there to do? What can we do? So we have our Adolescent Outreach services. We can offer financial support, and we're going to get into all of these, and also some education employment support. So when I think of our larger adolescent young adult services unit, there are 29 outreach workers. So there's one per office, and then there's a supervisor for each region. Um, but the outreach workers can do everything from, you know, more weekly visits, kind of hands-on stuff, financial support that we offer. Could be anything, from like day-to-day challenges that we are as far as meeting their needs or around employment or school. And then for the education support, there's a lot there. And I think sometimes the biggest challenge is trying to match what we have with what the youth want to do and also getting them at that window where they're really interested in hearing about it before they've lost motivation, before they've dealt with too much failure where they get discouraged. So I'm going to get into these things, but that's break it down to three big categories. Like those are three baskets that you can kind of put in for a lot of our services. So for our adolescent outreach workers, as I said, there are one per office. So there's 29 offices. That's not a lot. We would love to increase it. We would love to get the funding to increase it and have more. The way that the program is structured, they're able to work with youth that are in unrestricted foster homes kinship homes, child-specific, or those youth in independent living that are living in apartments in the community, renting a room from someone, going living on campus at college. So they're able to work with those youth because the state doesn't have the funds to do all of that. And it's also included in the contracts for our group homes, our res ed programs, and our specialized foster care that they're supposed to provide these same services for their youth in their care. Um, I mean, our outreach workers, even if that youth is not assigned to them and the youth is in a, let's say, a mentor foster home or Kennedy Donovan, they can do like a check-in and have a meeting, but they can't do that weekly work that is really important for our teens as far as establishing like a trusting relationship and helping them to understand and to hear from the youth what is going on for them, to engage with them around getting their license, driver's ed, looking for a job. I mean, those are all things that our outreach workers can do. So they do have weekly meetings. So you can imagine that if someone's going out every single week, that the caseload is going to be limited because you're getting in, if you're getting in 15 visits a week, plus you're doing all these other contacts, they spend a lot of time on the road. Um, but they are doing the other contacts. There are some youth that have closed out, but they still assist them with applications, with financial aid information, helping them to access life skills. Um, so they can do like some of those targeted support. There is the extended assistance where they will be with some of our youth until they complete college or they turn 22, because there is a limit on how far we're able to go. Um, and then we also have, they work with our youth advisory boards. So each region has youth advisory board. Actually, the South has two. But those actually work with the youth on advocating, education for them, but helping them to engage with the political system, engage with DCF, because we need that lived experience to help inform the system. The only way things are going to change is if we actually hear their voice. It's nothing for them without them. We need to make sure that it's something that they want. They're not being used as window dressing, or for publicity. But if something that they want, that they're working towards, that our young adults are able to advocate and have support around that. I mean, I know that for our education benefits that we had our tuition fee waiver, which used to be just for adoption when that first came out. And then our youth advisory boards advocated to expand that for youth in guardianship and also youth that stay in care until they're 18 and sign back in. So they were part of that push, part of advocating with the legislative branch and getting that put into place, getting the funding for that. So that is one of the things that the advisory boards do. It's a great way to build those leadership skills and add something to their resume as well. As far as financial support that DCF has for youth, I mean, outside of paying for placement, we do have some placement resources, but we do have one thing that's really not known very well is our life skills funding. So for youth that are in care, they're in placement, not just DCF custody, but they're in placement. Or if they've been removed from the home, if they are on the run and we don't have a placement for them, we can still work with them as far as getting life skills funds. But if they're at home with mom and dad, they've not been removed or they've been returned home with mom and dad, we cannot access life skills funding for them. But this is a great support for those youth that do need help as far as getting a computer when they're in high school. And they can also use that, for getting a computer for college. We've had some youth use it to get an e-bike or an electric scooter because where they're living, there's not a lot of public transportation and they're trying to get to work. So that way, we can get funds for that, funds for interview clothes, for public transportation passes. If they want to do like an EMT course through the community colleges, that's not covered by financial aid because it's not part of a degree program, but our life skills funds can pay that. And I believe that's a couple $1,000s for that program. We've had some youth, they want to do an eyelash course or a nail course, and that's not covered by financial aid. So we are able to use funds to help with that. Life skills can also pay for driver's education, licensing fees. We had one youth use it for passport fees. Some of our youth that when they go to college, they want to study abroad for a semester, and it's a program that is part of their college. We can use some life skills funds to help with that because financial aid is not going to meet all of the need. Our education training voucher is not going to meet all of it, so life skills can fill that gap to make sure that they're able to have that experience. We've had a number of youth that have studied abroad for a semester or a year. They come back. They've actually put some letters in our youth newsletters, talking about their experience and how valuable it was for them. So those funds they're very flexible as far as what we can do. We've even paid for half of someone's first insurance when they get a car. So we can't buy the car. We might be able to help with a car repair, but there is a limit. There's a limit for how much we're able to access for each youth, how much we can spend on transportation needs for each youth. But those funds are there, and sometimes there are some workers that are great as far as advocating and getting so much for their youth. But then you have new social workers, and it takes a while for them to know what's going on. And not until they come across something do they start asking, because as much training as we do in the front end to give them all of the information, not everything's going to stick. I mean, just being realistic about anything. I mean, even for but back in school, whenever we were in a class about anything, whether it's high school or college, not everything sticks the first time you hear it. So it's the same thing for our new workers. We can tell them at length, but it may not really stick until they've had a chance to use it. So, if you're aware of life skills funding, that you can help advocate for that funding, that social worker can go and talk to people in their office and find out about it and help access that, because that is a huge support for our youth. Even like senior expenses, graduation expenses, they can use life skills for that as well. If they need money for the prom, we can use life skills to get them clothes for the prom, to get their hair done. So, I mean, there is a lot of flexibility. Another financial support that we do is placement for youth that are in care from 18 to 22. So those youth, sometimes depending on the clinical needs of a youth, that could be a foster home, it could be a kinship home, it could be group care or residential. I mean, everyone's needs will be different. But if a youth is ready to live on their own, or they've a relative that they can rent a room from, or a friend who they can rent a room from, we can pay them what would have been foster care payments. It's called so it's our YASP payments. So those are the young adult support payments that we have to give to youth, and they can use that to rent a room from someone that maybe we couldn't approve their house because that home because of Corey issues or space or something else. But we can give them the funds to rent a room somewhere for our youth that are in college. They can get those payments while they're living in the dorm, and then that way they can use that for their day-to-day expenses. It gives them the flexibility to engage in social events with their friends, to go to the movies, to go out to eat, and to have a more normal experience when they're in college. Um, and then we do have a few apartments that are through contracted providers, where our contract providers get the lease with a private landlord, and then the youth is placed there. It's considered a treatment program versus an actual apartment in the youth's name. It's not in their name, it is in the provider's name. So if there are issues, if they are breaking the rules, if they have to be removed, they can be removed from those apartments, and there are no tenant rights because it is considered a treatment modality. Um, but if they get a lease on their own, then of course all the normal rights apply for that. But it's through our independent living program that's different. We also do have very limited housing that is available, some housing vouchers. So we have our youth transitioning to supportive placement, our YTTSP program, I'm sorry, success program. That program is for youth that are going to college. They have at least 12 credits completed, 12 college level credits completed, and they have to be going to school full time. And that will pay, they start off paying 15% of the rent, and DCF pays the remainder. And then each year there's a small incremental change until they are responsible for most of it that last year. And in that last year, if there is opening for our FYI vouchers, then they can be transitioned to that if their case is closing. but that is a time limited program. So they can typically, they'll get in before age 20 because it ends at 25. So if we get them in at 21, they're not going to get the full benefit of that program. But we do have our FYI vouchers, which are for youth whose cases are closing. Um, so I mean, that's, for if the youth is graduating from college, or if they're graduating from the YTTSP program, or if they're just, the case is closing and they need housing. It is a housing voucher, so it does require that landlords agree to accept it. Those vouchers are done with housing authorities, so not every housing authority is going to agree to work with us. I think on the Cape we have Sandwich, maybe the only one right now, and they're working on Falmouth. But I mean, those vouchers are limited. There are only so many per area. At one point, we were able to get some additional vouchers when we had used all the ones that we had. But because under our current government administration, there have been funding cuts, so we have no additional vouchers right now for FYI. And they've all been given. So right now, until a youth leaves their voucher placement and that FYI vouchers ended for them, we can't give any new FYI vouchers because we don't have the capacity for additional ones right now. Hopefully that changes, but right now, unfortunately, that is a one limit. So it's the few housing vouchers that we do have, it is very tight. And I know I think every youth when we have 1,500 youth that turn 18 each year approximately, we don't have 1,500 vouchers. So I mean, they may all want an apartment and live on their own, but it's not always, that's not possible, and it's not always clinically appropriate. We do have some youth, they've been in a very structured setting for so long, and putting them into their own apartment is a recipe for disaster because they've not learned to structure their daily life, to take care of things on their own, to be independent, to pay utilities, and take care of their own needs. So they do try to assess a youth's ability to take care of themselves or level of independence before going into those programs. I also oversee our credit protection work that's done. So we have someone who's in charge of reviewing our credit reports. They run credit checks every 3 months. So each year we are hitting the three big credit agencies, and that fourth quarter we hit we repeat the first one again. And so it'll be twice with Experian one year, twice with TransUnion a different year, twice with Equifax the other year, but at least once with each of the credit agencies every year. But we're reviewing the credit reports for youth that are in care from 14 to 18. We find sometimes that parents or relatives have opened up a Comcast account or Eversource, and now there is a overdue balance that's going to collections, and that's showing up on a 14 or 15-year-old's credit report. Utility companies are really good about resolving that and taking care of that. Once they get a copy of the custody order and the birth certificate, they realize credit never should have been extended. We actually did have one youth that had a car loan in their name under 18. So I'm not sure how that one got by a bank, but somehow it did. Um, but we're able to help out with that. And for youth that are 18 to 22, when we get the credit reports, we share with them what the information is. And if there is a fraudulent account, then they're given support around how to fight that and how to, filing a police report and contesting that. For many of our youth that are 18 plus, you know, it's not so much fraud for them, but they may have some bad choices they've made, and they've overextended their credit, they're not paying it, or they have large balances. And so we bring that up to them, and the worker can have that conversation with them and maybe do some work with them around budgeting and support. But DCF is always looking at the credit report and trying to assess, what's fraud, and then also what's an issue that might need some support around budgeting or other education. Um, so we actually started we this year we have a new education and employment support specialist who also helps with our internship coordination. So while DCF did always offer support around internships, it's new that we actually have someone that's doing a lot of outreach and helping to identify those opportunities, providing newsletters. We've actually even expanded the amount that we're able to pay for youth that are doing internships. But we do have, we've been expanding our opportunities for them. We also have a lot of post-secondary education support as far as our tuition and fee waivers. So get into those, dig a little bit more. So we have our job readiness program. So we're trying to equip them with the skills that they'll need to be to get a job, to keep a job. Our internship will pay them, and we have a lot of you that don't have a lot of experience. So an internship, their choice is a great way for them to build their resume, to build connections, and earn some money. We've been working on employer partnerships, also with the trade unions as well. You know, that college is great, but it's not for every youth's interest. So, we're trying to really build out our connections with our trade unions, try to get connections with those programs. Um, and our education an internship coordinator is doing a lot of work as far as building a platform to have a centralized location for all this information so workers can log in, they can get access to it, they get support through the outreach worker or the outreach worker in their office, even if they don't have a regular outreach worker, and also doing more career support, getting more virtual job fairs, more mentoring opportunities, and trying to build the capacity for additional workshops. Let's see. So our Emerging Futures program is the internship that part of that. It pays up to $20 an hour for 80 hours. So they can get $20 an hour if they're doing an internship at MSPCA if they're not ready to be in a work field. I had that happen for one youth. She was not ready to socially engage with a lot of unfamiliar adults. She didn't have the skills or the capacity to really go into that environment yet. So we worked on kind of our pre-employment skills and looking at getting her to report to the MSPCA, to be responsible for her hours there, her job duties and responsibilities while she was there. And so we paid her as an internship, even though it was volunteer work. But realizing that was the need for her. Um, we've actually also had for youth that are interested in plumbing or electrical work that have no experience, being able to, when DCF is paying for the internship, there are plumbers, electricians that are willing to take someone on for free. But if they take them on as a journeyman, now the plumber has to give them pay. And so this is a way for them to get some experience, and the plumber can decide at the end, I'll take them on and I'll train them and I'll pay them. Um, or perhaps they just get the experience and they move on to something else. I had one youth in particular that was interested in being a mechanic, found his a body shop nearby that he wanted to do his volunteer work at. And so we paid him for an internship at the mechanic's office, well, the shop. And I think he was maybe 20 hours in and then realized it's not something he wanted to do. But great. I mean, that was a very easy way for him to figure out what was going to be right for him instead of going to a vocational school and starting a whole program and maybe getting partway through it or all the way through it and realizing it wasn't the career that he wanted. So there are a lot of ways to use that, but they do try to work on like personalized placements, trying to understand the youth and their needs and what's going to work for them. Try to work on the professional development, building their resume, building their experience, and on helping them to gain the skills they need. So the other part of education and employment is our post-secondary education support. And these are the funds that I oversee. It's the state and federal funds that we have for youth that are pursuing post-secondary education. So that is college or a FAFSA eligible vocational program, whether it's Rob Roy or Empire Beauty or New England Tractor Trailer Training School or Benjamin Franklin or community college or a state college, UMass University. I mean, they're all included. But whatever they're doing, I mean, there are some supports. Any youth that is in care for at least a year will be eligible for, if nothing else, our William Warren Scholarship, even if they do go home. We now actually have moved our applications online. There's a QR code right here, and I've shared the slides with Jordan so that way she can distribute them out to everyone. But there's a QR code. You can scan that with a phone, and that will bring you right to our website. There's a brief overview of our three main programs, and a link, of course, for the William Warren Scholarship as well. And then below those programs, there's a link for further information for the full eligibility, and they can click on it to apply. And most of our applications will take them under 5 minutes to do. Um, for the tuition fee waiver, I mean, they're uploading a picture of an ID or birth certificate. For our education training voucher, they're uploading copies of bills. They can do that with their phone. They do not need a laptop. There's nothing they have to print out and fill out. We've been trying to simplify that whole process. So for our tuition fee waiver, I mean, that's for any youth that is adopted or placed into guardianship through DCF, or is in DCF custody through a CRA, the Child Requiring Assistance Petition, a care and protection petition, or probate court custody. The one custody it does not apply to is the child that comes into DCF custody voluntarily. Parents voluntarily sign a youth into care. They do not qualify, and these are not limits that are set by myself. These are ones that are set by the Department of Higher Education and the legislative branch. Um, but the waiver is eligible for most of our youth. We don't take in a lot of voluntaries. Um, it goes up until age 25, so it is time limited. So if a youth comes back at 26, or actually when they are 25, it no longer applies. If they're turning 25 during the school year, so let's say the birthday is the end of September, school year starts at the beginning of September. If they're enrolled in school that fall and they're attending in the beginning of September, they can have that tuition fee waiver for the year. So that'll be for the fall and for the spring. So, but it will not go beyond that for any additional years. If they're not enrolled in the fall and they want to go in the spring, but they turn 25 at the end of September, they're not starting till the spring, so it's not going to apply. Um, but the youth do have to apply for FAFSA in order to get any access to our financial benefits. They do have to complete the FAFSA application or the MASFA if they do qualify as high school completers. So I'm not sure if you're aware that in let me see, it was July 2023, they did pass the tuition equity law, which was put into effect in January 2024, which did make all state funds available for higher education, available to undocumented youth as long as they qualify as high school completers, which means they did at least 3 years in a high school in Massachusetts. And that could have been incomplete years, but they did 3 different academic years, or maybe they repeated the ninth grade, three times, or maybe they did, the 10th, 11th, 12th. But they 3 years in a Massachusetts high school and then either getting a high school diploma in Massachusetts or doing the high set in Massachusetts. They will qualify as a high school completer for Massachusetts, and they can apply and get access to state funds that include our tuition fee waiver. So the tuition equity law didn't capture everyone, but it helped capture a number of our undocumented youth that come into care. So they do have to make sure they are maintaining good academic standing. If the grades fall below, if it's 2.0, or if they have a less than a 60% completion rate, they're put on academic probation. And then if that continues, they could lose financial aid. So there are some requirements that are part of that. So it covers the tuition fees at state schools. That includes UMass system, except for UMass Medical School. That is the one UMass school that is not included. But and it does not include like summer and winter courses or evening courses or online courses. This was not established by us, but by DHE and for what they consider state-supported courses. But it will cover the tuition fees. And that's going to vary by school. So if they're going to, I think Bridgewater State right now, the tuition at Bridgewater State University, the tuition fees out up to about $7,000 a semester. That's being covered by the tuition fee waiver. And they still get their Pell Grant. They still get other forms of aid, the Mass Grant and other things they may qualify for. But it does not cover room and board. It does not cover books. It does not cover transportation. It's only for Massachusetts schools. They do have to be Massachusetts residents to use it. So they can't live in Rhode Island and file their taxes or have a license in Rhode Island and get it. They do have to be Massachusetts residents. There is the residency requirement it is part of that. But for most of our youth, if they receive this, even if they don't qualify for anything else, like I think for like adoptions and guardianships before the age of 16, if they only qualify for this and maybe the William Warren grant, they will get typically enough financial aid to cover most of their costs. but it is not guaranteed it's all covered. And I think that's a misnomer that's been circulating out there for a long time, is that if they're in foster care, college is free, and it is not free. But we do have a lot of programs that can help reduce the cost and possibly eliminate the cost and cover it, but we cannot guarantee it's free. We've also had some youth that have moved into single rooms in the dorms, and those are also more expensive, and they're getting the most expensive meal plan, and they're staying on campus during the summer. And those are the ones where, it's tough, because we have to add the tuition fee waiver, add maybe ETV funds and other, and their the FAFSA financial aid, and sometimes it's not always enough. So I mean, those are, I mean, each case will be different, but in many cases, we are able, if they qualify for at least two of our programs, we're able to get most of that, if not all of it, covered going to a state school university. Um, Actually, I'm just going back to the second. We do have some youth. They get these amazing scholarships from private universities for 30, $40,000 a year. And that seems like a lot of money. But when their tuition and fee bill is $80,000 a year, it's not covering it, and they're still going to end up with loans. So, we always try to have those conversations about, what is going to be the best benefits for their time and for their money. I had one youth that was wanted to study criminal justice, wanted to be a police officer, and you don't need a college degree to be a police officer. That's definitely a big bonus if that's what they want to do. But to go to a private school or college in the UMass system, they're going to get the same degree. They end up with the same job, so it doesn't make sense to have loans. So sometimes it's important for all the adults in their lives to have those conversations, to have those talks. I've heard people at times say, "Look, I don't want to diminish their dreams," and it's not diminishing their dreams. It's about having a realistic conversation, making sure that we are explaining, what it's going to cost them and what they're able to get. So that way they're making an informed decision at the end. And those are huge life skills for them to learn. And it's, maybe they don't want to hear it from the DCF worker. Maybe they don't want to hear it from the outreach worker, but they might hear it from you. They might hear it from a foster parent. And sometimes, it's not having just one conversation. They need to have multiple conversations as they're talking about the future. We can never rely upon just one person to do all of the work. Or, the more people that are involved in supporting youth, the better they will do. And that's been shown up by research. The more involved adults they have, the better outcomes we have at the end. We have our Massachusetts, our foster child grant. So this is for youth that come into care under a care and protection petition and stay in care. They do not achieve permanency. There's no adoption or guardianship. They stay with us under the care and protection petition until 18. Those are the youth that qualify for this. So, I mean, right now it is missing a lot. I'm trying to advocate with the Department of Higher to expand the eligibility on that one. It all depends on how the state budget goes, but that is right now it is only available to those youth. So if they're going to a vocational school or college, they can get up to $3,000 a semester. So that's between June and December, and then January and June on the other end. So $3,000 for the fall, $3,000 for the spring, so $6,000 total. So if a youth qualifies for this, they will qualify and meet the requirements for the tuition fee waiver and also ETV funds. And it's so if youth qualifies for this and they go to a state school, chances are their bill will be completely covered. They get the tuition fee waiver and ETV and they're going to a state school, chances are we can cover the bill. But it is, making sure that they are, applying for it. We do get some youth that they forget to apply. We can't pay for past years. So we've had some youth that come back at 19 or 20 and like, oh, I've been in school for a year or 2 years and I had to take out loans. We can't help out with the past bills. We can only help with current academic semesters. But this is also another program that is accessible if they do qualify as a high school completer and they do complete the MASFA. So this is another one of the pots of money that they would have access to if they qualify for that. Just like everything else, all financial aid, they do have to make satisfactory academic progress. So if their grades drop or they're not completing at least 60% of the courses, Then they can lose all financial aid. So they have to stay eligible for financial aid in order to get any of our programs. If a youth does drop out and does lose aid in one school, they can. We always recommend go to community college. They will qualify for aid at a different school, and start off in a smaller setting. I think for a lot of our youth, and actually I've had a number of conversations recently with some youth, that sometimes they feel unprepared to go to a big school and university. I had one youth tell me that, her social worker told her that living on campus was the best experience and that she should do it and be a great experience for her. And she went to the four-year university, and at the end of that first year, she lost financial aid and she left, and she went to community college the following year. And she said the community college was the better experience for her, that she actually liked the diversity and ages, that she enjoyed hearing from people who had a lot of experience and a lot of knowledge, and she learned a lot in that setting. And it wasn't a huge environment, so she didn't feel lost. She didn't feel as isolated as she did living on campus. So, it's always being mindful of what is the right match for the youth that you're working with. Just because something may have been great for us doesn't mean it'll be a great experience for them. Some youth will stay in a foster home where they're going to college, and maybe living on campus may not be the best thing for them. So this is available at schools in state, schools out of state, private schools and public schools and vocational schools. So this is one of our more versatile programs. They do have to maintain Massachusetts residency, so they can go to New York. We have some youth going to college in New York, but they maintain the Massachusetts license or state ID. They file their taxes as Massachusetts residents, and they only register to vote in Massachusetts, not New York, because doing any one of those things, filing your taxes as another state resident, registering to vote in another state, or getting your license in another state will invalidate your Mass residency, and they will lose the foster child grant. Um, and they have to be enrolled full time also to get this as well. So there are some requirements around that. And then we have our education training voucher program. This is available for every youth that comes into care under any type of custody, and they stay in custody until 18. It's also eligible for any youth that's adopted after turning 16 or placed in a guardianship with kin after turning 16. So it's not for all adoption, it's not for all guardianship, um, but it is for all youth that are with us and stay in care until 18. So this can pay up to $5,000 an academic year. We can give them some money for books and transportation if it's not all used paying for school. So depending on what school they go to, if they go to a private school, chances are the full $5,000 is going to the private school to pay for unmet need for cost of attendance. But if they're going to, one of the state four-year colleges, um, they will typically get some funds that they can use for books and transportation, and also get some funds to help pay for summer school, or meet an unmet need during the school year, if for some reason they need additional aid. Um, so they do. I mean, this is good until, unlike the other programs that expire at 25, this one goes until 26. This is federal funds. So because it is federal funding, it's not covered by the MASFA. So even if they're high school completers, they cannot get ETV funds. If DCF does get their special immigrant juvenile status done and they get a green card while they were in college, and then they can complete the FAFSA, then they can get ETV funding. So it can cover books, transportation. We can even use it for some daycare expenses. But it's for dorms. I mean, like I said, the first thing is first paying for the on-campus accommodations, meal plans, tuition and fees. And if there's money left over, then we can help with some of the other stuff. If they need to be there during the summer, sometimes this will help bridge that gap as far as covering the summer housing, realizing that a lot of youth, just because they've gotten to college, that we're not done yet. Like we still have to figure out housing during the Thanksgiving break, during the winter break, during spring break, and during the summer, and all of these do add up. Some schools do provide meal plans during the breaks, and then some don't. So when they get into college, just being mindful of what do they need, and how about where things going to be for the entire year for them, not just, getting in the door. Or William Warren Scholarship. Awards can vary anywhere. It could be $200, $400. It could go up to $2,000 is the max. We don't have the funds to give everyone an award, and it's based upon unmet need. So if their bill is covered by their Pell Grant and the tuition fee waiver and ETV or Mass Grant or other scholarships, this if there's no unmet need for the cost of attendance for tuition fees, room and board, then this is not something they will get. This is for that unmet need. This is not money for books and transportation. This is not money for a computer. Um, so kind of it is that gap. So youth that are in foster care for at least a year will qualify for this. They can go home. They can be a third party custody with a relative. Um, they could be adopted. They could be stay in foster care. This one is very broad. It does expire at age 25 if they qualify for the MASPA or the FAFSA. Either one, they can get this. This is still state funds. Um, and it is a competitive scholarship, so we are looking at how are they doing academically if they reapply for a second year. We ask for their grades. We want to see their high school transcripts the first time they apply, then we'll see their college or vocational school transcripts for consecutive years. So they can get the award more than 1 year. Um, you know, the, Unlike the tuition fee waiver and the foster child grant that is done just once, ETV and the William Warren are done each year. So once they have the tuition fee waiver, they have that, and if they need another copy, we can do that. But they have that stays active at the school they're attending. If they transfer schools, they give it to the next school as well. The foster child grant stays active with the Department of Higher Ed on their system, and the ETV is each year. William Warren Scholarship is each year. And we actually did enter into a new memorandum of understanding with the Department of Higher Ed. So they are getting information from DCF for youth that are 17 and older in DCF care and custody. So those youth that come in, they're still in our custody at 17, and we're expecting for them to stay with us. That information is going to the Department of Higher Ed. So when a Mass resident completes their FAFSA, that FAFSA information, the massive information, is going to the Department of Higher Ed to compare with their system, and they make a match. They will notify someone that you might be eligible for aid and to contact DCF, and they'll provide the information. So hopefully we can catch some of those youth who've left DCF, because sometimes at 18 they're tired of looking at us, and I get it. Just like any youth, they want to move out. They want to be on their own. They're tired of, DCF, the de facto parent, telling them what they can do, what they can't do. But they may forget all that stuff that they were told as far as signing back in. So if they leave at 18, they can sign back into care. They have to sign back in by age 21, but they are able to sign back in if they stay with us till 18. Then they can sign back in at any point. So if they do need a break, if they need a gap year from DCF, I get it. um, and they can fine leave at 18, come back at 19, leave at 18, come back in 1 month. I mean, whatever it's going to be. Um, but they up to age 21, they can sign back in and receive support. They do not need an open case to get any of this financial aid benefits. So as long as they qualify for the program, they don't have to have an open case. If they don't want to ever deal with DCF again, just do the paperwork. You want to deal with the ongoing worker, it'll just be one of us in central office, and we'll process it and help them to connect with the aid. But I mean, 18, I think one of the toughest things for them to understand is their relationship with DCF will change. Because before 18, if anything happens, DCF is on the hook for whatever they've done. Whether they've done something with their friends or what have you, we're right there on the Boston Globe across the front page. DCF let this happen. Can you believe? Yeah, and yes, the first thing you're going to see on the Globe or the Times is what did DCF do? At 18, they are adults, so we work in collaboration with them, and so they have more freedom as far as making decisions. And I've had youth that I've worked with, and maybe things weren't always perfect, but they're responsible enough, and they'll go to New York to visit friends. Just let me know, when you're coming back. And who you're going to stay with. I need a way to reach you. If something happens to you, or if you're flying to Florida or to California, like give me your flight number. I want to know that you land okay. So we're asking for that courtesy, but they do have freedom where they can go, and they can have a chance to have a normal life. Because when they go to college, they do not want to tell everyone they're DCF involved. They do not want to repeat that story as a chance to start out fresh when they go to a trade school. They're also not sharing it with any more people than they have to, because they want that chance to kind of escape that stigma of being a foster child. So just to recap, we have the tuition fee waiver for our funds. That's available till 25, foster child grants till 25, ETV till 26 or 5 academic years. Um, and then the William Warren can be received as many times as they apply, and can receive it up until age 25. So this slide right here really shows that when we look at disruption for education, whether it's vocational school or college, these are the big highlights for why youth drop out of school, whether it's vocational or college. The biggest one is housing instability when we don't plan for those breaks. And so I mean, that is a big one to note. Also be mindful, if maybe living in the dorms may not be great for them, if they don't do well with a lot of unfamiliar people or with unstructured time, but they have a great relationship with their foster parent, maybe it makes sense to commute to school, or at least for that first year until they're established. The other piece is the financial instability, making sure that they have access to those funds, that their DCF worker is setting them up if they're moving on campus with those young adult support payments early. So that way, when they move on campus, they have those funds. Um, you know, if they're graduating from their senior year and they might need a computer for college, getting the funding then for this, to make sure they have the funds for the computer instead of waiting till they move into their college campus or they start their program to ask for the funds because there's always a delay in getting that check done and sent to them. So, as much as we can do in the beginning, making sure they have everything that we can get. So bleed the system, get as much as you can for the kids, advocate for them, ask. It never hurts to ask, but I think every youth in foster care deserves everything that the state can and will give them. Um, because they've already had, I mean, the worst part's already happened. Whatever trauma that they've experienced, and if nothing else, being removed from the home is trauma. But there are a lot of behaviors that are trauma driven, but they've already been through enough. So I would say, get as much as you can for that youth, so that way they can have a greater chance for success in the future. Sometimes there's mental health problems and medical issues that are not planned for. We have a number of youth that they leave high school, they turn 18, they never want to be on their medication again. And that's not always a great plan for some of our youth that struggle with depression or anxiety or psychosis. Stopping that medication could be the one thing that helped them to be successful. And even for our youth with attention deficit issues, that was a great strategy for them to stay focused and to attend well and got them through high school. And they stopped that, and they no longer have that support, and they struggle while they're in college. If they had an IEP in high school, I tell all of our youth, make sure you give that to the school, you bring it to the student services office and ask for accommodations. That can be anything from longer testing times, a separate space to take their tests, help with taking notes. I mean, there are a lot of options that schools can give. And I tell the youth, this is your work strategy. This is not about you being unable to do something. It's about you knowing what strategies you need to be successful and keeping those in place. So bringing that IEP to college and making sure they have that when they leave care, making sure if there was an IEP, make sure DCF gives them that. So even if they're going to sign out of DCF services, making sure they have that copy of that IEP when they do leave. So that way, if they go to college down the road, that they're going to have that and they're not going to try to search through school records or deal with the school departments trying to get that. Um, some of our youth do leave because the family need help, whether it's the parents struggling with substance abuse, mental health, or parenting their peer siblings. And sometimes it's a difficult time trying to balance that work school or work social life or school social life balance. There can be a lot of things that impact their success and their persistence with post-secondary education. And I think the biggest thing is really making sure that, everyone is having those conversations. So even if you know that the social worker or the foster parent had a conversation with them, making sure that we're asking them that, maybe you're gonna be the second or third time that someone's talked to them about something, but still talk to them about it. Have those conversations. Ask them. I think one thing that's not asked often enough, especially for our LGBTQ IA youth, is, are you in a relationship with someone? And how does that person treat you? And sometimes asking those questions, opening the door, asking that, if you think, if you make it part of your normal practice, just ask them like, how do they identify? Like, what pronouns do they want? Are they seeing anyone and just not assuming any gender? Just leaving that door open. Most of them are gonna be straight, but for those youth who are part of the LGBTQIA community, if you open that door, you let them know that I'm a safe person to talk to about things. I had a meeting recently with three youth that identify as transgender, and the biggest thing for them was being able to talk to someone about what was going on, or if they were in a bad relationship, or they were struggling with their mental health. That's a component for what's going on for them. And so the more we can have those conversations, the more we practice, give them that support that they need and being that person available to them, um, the better off they will be in the end. So definitely, they need to have emotional support. They have to be present to listen. We have to practice, offer practical help. Actual resources. If they need help, and some of our youth that you can give them a phone number, you give them an email address, but sometimes they need someone to do that with them. I mean, I always think back to when I was 17 and my mother asked me to call and make my own medical appointment. I'd never done that before. It was something that was new and different. I had no idea what was going to be asked. Did I need my health insurance information? Like, what are they going to ask? I was nervous because I'd never done it. I'm like, Mom, just please just call. And so she's like, no, she's like, you're to call right now. And she was there. And I called and I'm like, well, like they just want a date and my name and date of birth. Like that's it was super easy. Like, why was I anxious about that? Because it was something new. And for our youth, whenever they're doing something new, they may be anxious about it. And sometimes just having someone who's going to be there with them as they're doing it. So maybe if they're walking into that therapist's office the first time, they're walking into that doctor's office the first time, sometimes having someone there or someone on the phone with them makes it a little bit easier. So that way, if you can't be there, in person, sometimes if you're there on the phone with them as they're doing something, that might help ease some of the anxiety because they don't have that stable support. They don't have that stable base that people have when they grow up with their biological families. So the more that we can be there for them, we let them know that we are there for them, and the better off that they're going to be in the long run because they need that. They need that strong base, that need that support from all of us. Mhm. Any questions? I know I am a talker. I sometimes talk fast, so please, if something was not clear, ask. If you had a follow-up question that maybe I didn't get to, please ask.
Thank you so much, Seth. That was incredible, very valuable information. And I just wanted to take a second to acknowledge DCF and thank you and thank DCF in general for all that you guys are doing for the youth that we all mutually serve. I know it's a lot of busy work, so we appreciate you guys and all that you're doing to help these kids. We did have a question in the chat, so I can read that off. Hello, great presentation, very informative. I'm curious to know if DCF offers educational assistance to the kids who are in college and need help aside from financial assistance, or will they be referred back to school resources?
As far as tutoring, they will be referred back to the school resources. Our outreach workers are not able to do that. I mean, they're also not subject matter experts, so they can't offer that. Um, but they do have resources on campus, so we do refer them back to getting those supports on campus. I mean, our workers can talk to them about what's going on or talk to them about the strategies, but they can't do that hands-on tutoring and guidance. And we don't have contracts with any providers to do that, but the schools have that for free right there. So that's and if we can get them connected early on with those resources on campus, then they're more likely to access those down the road when they need them.
Awesome. Thank you. Demetrius.
I, I, you went through a lot of different programs, and my question is, and I didn't know about most of them, as many of the others on this call also said some in the chat. But my question is, of all the kids in DCF who turn 18, just I'm just wondering, what's a rough idea of what percentage of how many of them receive some of these types of assistance?
So for the youth, I don't have the current numbers, but I do recall one number that I did see. I think it was for 2022 or 2023. Approximately 1,500 kids were turning 18 in care the year, and about two-thirds of those signed back in. So for those, so that's already limiting. I mean, every youth that turns 18 between 18 and 24 when their case closes, they can get discharge funds, which is it's only $2,500. So that's like a rental assistance or down payment for towards an apartment. It's not a lot. So every youth, we typically they're able to get that at least. Even if they take discharge support at 18 or 19, they can still come back in before 21 and sign back into care. It doesn't mean that they're not eligible. They're not giving up anything. So if they leave at 18 or 19 and they take that discharge payment, they can still come back down the road and get services. I would say right now for our education training voucher program, so these are youth that are 18 to 25 that are doing college or vocational programming right now. We have I think last year we had 590 youth apply for ETV funds. And I think we had about similar numbers. Actually, I think there was maybe 600 or 700 that were using the tuition fee waiver last year. So I mean, they're not all using that benefit. But those are just the ones that are in college or state schools. We do have some youth that are going to private schools or out of state. So I can't give you a good number as far as how many are getting some kind of service.
That's fine.
Um,
That's great.
but I mean, if you say about two-thirds that sign back in, that they're getting some kind of a service,
So
one way or another.
are they not able to sign back in if they're back with their biological parents?
So if DCF has custody until 18, they still have the option of signing in at 18 into services, even if they're home. But if
Okay,
they're home and custody's been returned back to the parents, then that's not an option for them.
I see. Thank you.
Good question.
Lex.
Oh, sorry.
Hi, Seth. That was a terrific presentation. I learned so much. My special area of interest is with LGBTQA kids and youth. And I'm wondering, when investigating schools and looking at those opportunities, how does one find out which are most LGBTQ friendly and amenable?
As far as well, for colleges, it varies by school. Recently I've had youth that were transgender identified, their schools that they felt were great. But I mean, they all had different experiences. I know that our youth going to Salem State get a lot of support. I know that Bridgewater has a dorm. It's the Woodward Hall. It's one of the dorms on campus, and that is for anyone who is part of the LGBTQ community. Um, or sometimes there are people, someone who they want special housing arrangements or living with a boyfriend. I think some of them are able to get in there as well, even if they are cisgender and straight. But it is for those. It is an alternative housing arrangement. And so a lot of the LGBTQ youth will be in that building. I've had youth at UMass Dartmouth that report having positive experiences. I mean, all of the state schools will have, there usually is a group on campus, but not every youth is going to join that group or feel a need to join that group, and they can still report having positive experiences. I think for any community college, you don't have the same community atmosphere that you have because people aren't living on campus, so they're not there full time. But for the four-year schools, we've heard a lot of positive feedback from them as far as having supports and support groups available. I know UMass Amherst actually there's an adoption support program at UMass Amherst. So that's private and state adoptions. And we've connected them with the Massachusetts Network of Foster Care Alumni. And they're now doing some work to try to offer more support for foster youth on campus. So that's a great partnership that we've been developing. Um, but I got to say, I mean, if I look at, I mean, Westfield State, if you're looking at Western Mass, Westfield is great working with our youth. So if any youth needs to stay on campus during the summer, it's only $2,000. So that makes it a lot easier for us to meet that gap. Um, Salem State has been great as far as covering like winter and spring housing. I'm helping out sometime with extra funds when we need it, but they've been really good. So UMass Dartmouth, if a youth gets a job working on campus, this is any youth, gets a job working on campus, like doing landscaping, they can get free housing on campus during the summer. So there are opportunities that we're working to try to grow and just find out more about. I know Bridgewater, they also have their single point of contact person on campus who's also been great helping out with like housing issues. A lot of the campuses do also have food pantries, so they can also get assistance. So, so that way they can have some food in their room because the cafeteria is not open 24/7, and when you're studying, you need study breaks and you need food to feed your brain. So that is great. I know that Salem State offers a meal plan during the summer. And also during the winter. So I know that, there are some schools. I think it's asking those questions and finding out, what does the youth need? If they need to stay on campus year round, like what is available? Um, I know a lot of the schools during like the summer break, they have to move to a different dorm. Westfield does not. So I mean, they all function a little differently. In Westfield, they can stay in their own room, but all the schools do function a little differently. It's we maybe under the state umbrella, but it doesn't mean that the same thing's happening everywhere. Same can be said for DCF area offices. That every place, that has its own culture and its own resources and way of doing things. But I think that our state colleges, universities are great and very supportive. If they're from the Boston area and they can commute, I mean, UMass Boston is also fantastic. The challenge for UMass Boston with someone who lives outside of Boston is they only have housing for freshmen. So then they have to move to an apartment somewhere in the community. So then I mean, each college has its pluses and minuses. Um, UMass Lowell has also been doing a great job, really expanding their programs. So I would say first you find out what they're interested in, what they want to major in, see what the options are for the best programs for school. Like Bridgewater State has a photonics lab. I mean, they're one of the few state colleges with a photonics lab in it. I mean, they want us to, that's great. They don't have to go to MIT. They don't have to go to Wentworth or to Northeastern, but there are some state schools that do have photonics labs that do have opportunities for specialized fields like that, and a lot of new buildings that have been put up. So I think start with that. Start with the schools, see which schools are going to meet their needs, and then figure out what's available on campus for them.
Very helpful. Thank you.
Always feel free to ask. We actually have the Massachusetts Network of Foster Care Alumni is working on a pilot program for a mentor-mentee program. So for a youth that is an alum of foster care, any age, to partner them with someone with another youth who's also in care, so that way they have someone with lived experience that knows what it's like, has walked in their shoes. So they're starting that. It's going to start this summer, but they're recruiting the last few. But it is a pilot program. I'm hoping it goes well. I'm hoping that we can extend that, expand that out to other areas. I also hope that the state will continue to give us the funding for new initiatives like this. But that is one thing that a lot of youth have asked for. A lot of our youth advisory boards have talked about like the need of having like a mentor, having someone who knows what it's like and has done and has succeeded, and can kind of show them the right path and understand their frustrations.
That's awesome. Thank you. We have about 3 more questions left in the chat. I just wanted to check in with you, Seth, since we're at 1:35. Are you okay to answer a few, or would you like to?
We can.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay. Emily asked, she has a question about services available to youth with mental and emotional challenges who probably can't handle college or living on their own.
So at 18, actually before 18, usually around 17, DCF usually, or I mean, everything's going to be different depending on when they come into care, et cetera. But, we want to start at 17, 17 and a half, applying for DMH or DDS services, depending on what the needs are. If it's mental health or if it's an IDD, intellectual developmental delay. Um, that we want to make sure that, that we're applying for adult services early because they also have housing options. So that way there are, depending on the needs, different levels of support available and different housing options. DMH also has next gen careers, so they offer a lot of support around for youth who do have mental health issues, and helping connect them is also Mass Ability. Is also there to help get supportive work environments for some youth. But with DMH and DDS services, I mean the goal is to once they do leave DCF at 22 is to have that set up by the time they turn 22 that we know where they're going. Sometimes at 21 they're able to start transitioning a little early, and then that way they're able to go to a supportive living environment that can help them and be there in the long run.
Thank
And
you.
whenever possible, if there are kin available, like and relatives want to be part of that network, that is always the best option because no one's going to understand someone's challenges like family will.
Thank you. Okay, Suzanne asked, are these opportunities and supports available for foster youth who are committed to DYS until the age of 18 or later?
So yeah, if they're in DCF custody and placed in DYS, then they're eligible for this. If they are just in DYS custody and not DCF custody, then these benefits do not apply. But we do have a number of youth that they're in DCF custody and then they end up in DYS and placed in DYS, but DCF's custody stays active until they're 18, so they can still get all these benefits and access these services and sign back in. I mean, DYS, they can also sign in at 18. They can sign in with DCF. I've seen some youth over the years, not very often, but I've seen there's two that I can think of that signed back in with DYS upon turning 18, but did receive the financial benefits as far as school, but they wanted the placement in the DYS foster home. So, I mean, every situation is going to be different, but the important thing is just the underlying DCF custody.
Okay, and the last question I am seeing, Peg asked, will the kids' DCF worker change when they turn 18 to one of the 29 counselors that support the older 18-year-olds? How is that communicated to the youth and their current foster parents or whatever, caregiver they are with?
So when they get the Adolescent Outreach worker, they don't lose their social worker. This is not someone who replaces the ongoing social worker. This is someone in addition to. So they still have their social worker that's going out there once a month, or depending on the worker, twice a month. And they also have their outreach workers that's going out there every week. So it is a second social worker in a sense who's actually doing a more intense service and really gets to know the youth. Like I said, we have some youth that are in residential programs or group care, and we know that they're going to go to college, and we try to connect them with the outreach worker before they leave, as they're going to make that transition to college. So they've started establishing the relationship, but it does not change their ongoing worker. The only time the ongoing worker changes is if that worker leaves their position for some reason, or the case transfers to a different area office.
Thank you. All right, any other questions or comments for Seth? Emma.
Thank you so much. It is a lot, but it's very helpful, especially with me that am newly dealing with teenagers. So My question was, I think it was when you were talking about post-education, where you said, and correct me if I'm wrong, that if a child signs themselves in, they cannot receive some of the benefits. What if the parent signs the child in? Do they still get the benefits?
Um, so if the parents sign the child in before the child is of course under the age of 18, we're not taking voluntaries on someone that's 18 or older. um, but if the parent signs a voluntary placement agreement for them to be in foster care, and then they can still get the education training voucher. They can still um, get outreach support and services. They can still get access to life skills. But I mean, there are some benefits for like the tuition fee waiver. They don't get that. They don't get the foster child grant. But the rest of it, they can still have access to, because 18, they can sign themselves back in at 18 to stay in care, even if they were in voluntarily originally. Yeah. But I'd say DCF used to take a lot more voluntaries back in the day when I started 27 years ago. We don't see a lot of those now. It's always special circumstances. Yeah. They realized that if we take voluntary custody, that we would end up most likely keeping custody, that it's somehow we just continue forever. So they learned to think a lot harder about taking those.
Thank you. Anything else? Okay. Well, like Seth mentioned, he has already shared the slides with me. So I will send a follow-up email that includes everyone who was on this call so that you receive the slides to refer back to. A reminder, this recording will be on our YouTube channel if you would like to go back and watch. And I will also be sharing the flyer that Seth sent to me about, let me pull up the name of it, the DCF College Career and Resource Expo. They're holding that on April 24th, and the youth that you are assigned to are invited to attend that. Seth, do you want to share just a little bit about that so that they have an understanding as to what that will be?
So we have admission staff from our Massachusetts state colleges, community colleges, the four-year schools, UMass system are going to be there. We have admission staff from vocational schools. I mean, that's everything from the New England Tractor Trailer Training School, Rob Roy, Empire Beauty School. We have HVAC programs, the Technology Learning Center. We have job corps also sending some representatives there, and some other support agencies like Silver Lining Mentoring, the New England Youth Coalition, which is a youth advocacy group for kids in care, the New England, so the Massachusetts Foster Care Alumni Association, Network of Foster Care Alumni, they will be there as well. Let me see. Mass Ability is going to be there. Next Gen Careers with DMH, they're going to be there as well. So it's a chance for them to come and meet with the admission staff and the support staff. And we have some potential employers. So USPS is going to be there, Boston Fire Department. We have someone coming from EOHHS, the Executive Office of Health and Human Services. And they do the hiring for a lot of state agencies. They're going to be there. Cataldo Ambulance is going to be there. So we have a lot of different programs, some potential employers, Mass Achieve, which is more like employment focused and support focused. DMH will also represent their community centers as well, where they offer mental health support and services and employment assistance. So they're going to be there, and 3 workshops, one covering interview skills, one working on resume skills, and one that's working talks about DCF financial aid programs that we have for post-secondary ed. There will be lunches to go. So they can take their lunch, they can be there for as long or as short as they want, and they can leave. They can take that lunch for one of the 30-minute workshops, eat it there. Every youth that comes, every youth in care that comes gets a $25 American Express gift card, whether they stay there for 5 minutes or they stay there for longer. Like our goal is to give them what they want. There are many different paths. So after high school or high set program, we don't know, what we want them to start thinking early. So all high school age youth, they could be freshmen, sophomores, juniors in high school, recent graduates. They could be in a high set program. They could be in college and want to trade and change schools or paths. That's from 11 o'clock till 1 p.m. on the 24th. It's at the Marriott, Courtyard Marriott on 75 Felton Street in Marlborough.
Thank you. Like I said, I'll make sure I include that flyer in that email so that you all can spread the word, because it just sounds like such an incredible opportunity for youth to take advantage of if they can.
So
All
the youth
right.
can register themselves, or someone can help them register for it, which is great because it gives us a head count so we know how much to have. And we even have like some swag for them, which is a 3-in-1 charging cable they can use for phones and all electronics. So hopefully, if you have any youth that are interested, please have them come. They can start thinking about what comes next now. Don't wait till they're junior or senior in high school. Don't wait till they finish their high set program, but start thinking now.
One last question. Sorry, Jody. Can I share this information for that training with my LAC agency that have kids in care?
Luck is bringing a number of youth to the College Career and Resource Expo.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Awesome. Well, like I said, Seth, thank you so much. This was so incredibly helpful, and we just appreciate you taking time out of your very busy schedule, I'm sure, to spend some time with us. Like I said, I'll share the follow-up email, and if anyone has any further questions for Seth, make sure you reach out or you let me know so that I can be connecting you all with him.
Thank you for advocating for your youth. I appreciate it because they deserve everything they can get. Can't say that enough. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I hope that everyone has a great rest of the day, and reach out if you need anything.